reason I chose ITI was because my younger brother went to ITI, and I watched that boy's life changed in front of my eyes, and I'm like, okay. I worked in a plant for at least 12 years, and I had 12 years experience, but I never was able to get to that operator position because I didn't have a certification, and that's what ITI gave me. Just off of my offer letter from my job that ITI placed me at, I'm able to purchase my home right now. All you have to do is apply yourself. If I could do it, anybody could do it.
This is Sports 225.
Well, it's March. It means March Madness is upon us. And what could be madder than talking to the chair of the NCAA Division I Basketball Committee, my longtime friend, Tom Burnett of the Southland Conference. Tom, how are you?
I'm doing well, Lee. Great to be with you. And yeah, we're just a week away from the madness, the selection of such, and here we go.
Yeah. So to set the stage, I mean, Tom's been on the show before, but and we know each other from when he worked in New Orleans, actually lived in Prairieville, but he's been the commissioner of the Southland Conference a long time. But one would say, how does one matriculate up the field to become the chair of the Division I Basketball Committee? I mean, that's as prestigious as it gets, in my opinion.
Well, you're very kind to say that. I often say that they finally got to the end of the list, and here I am. But right place, right time. It's kind of the story of my career. Had some interest expressed about at a certain point in time, there were no commissioners on the committee about 5 or 6 years ago. And there was an opening that the Southland could fulfill. And I had intended to put one of our athletic directors forward, but the NCAA asked if I would be interested because they did not have a commissioner at the time. So just again, like so many other chapters in my career, right place, right time, very fortunate. And I couldn't be more honored and privileged to be in this role. I think I'm the first FCS commissioner to serve in this capacity. And, that's just a bit overwhelming for me when I look at all the people that have sat in this seat.
That's pretty cool. So you spent years in the process, but you've been there for the actual selection process as a member of the committee. And I'd be curious to know anything that you would like to tell us about the inner workings of that, because people always, outside of the last four in and the last four out, and Dickie V going, "Oh, state you got screwed. They should have been in." It's really an amazing process. And anything, from those days, I'd really like to, get your thoughts.
That next Sunday night, I'm sure after the fact, but I will tell you, Lee, to walk into that room with some very esteemed colleagues, high-profile athletic directors, other conference commissioners as well. I think the thing that struck me immediately was, the integrity in the room and the real intention to get this right. It'll never be perfect, but before I was on the committee as an outside commissioner, I was just hopeful they would get the Southland Conference right. And, for us, it could have been the difference between maybe a 14 seed line and a 13 seed line. But we have had some success too when our seeding has allowed us to, really focus on the matchup, including a win last year as a 14 seed in the tournament. So I just wanted to make sure they got us right. So walking into the room, I don't know that I had an expectation one way or the other, but what I realized there's a group of people there very serious about this, not taking themselves too seriously, but certainly wanting to get it right. And in my role initially, I had to get the Big South Conference right. I had to get the SWAC right. All of these other conferences that I was assigned at the time. And what I have found over time is just everyone is in that same mode and really wanting to be as accurate and as good as we can be.
Well, there's so many teams. You can't watch everybody, and how do you rely on the information? Because there's 350 Division I teams, give or take, and there's no way to just know, I guess.
Well, that the tools we get at this, obviously, we're all watching quite a bit of basketball, more basketball than I could have ever imagined in my life. But we have 12 committee members now, and they're all assigned a series of conferences. We call it the Conference Monitoring Program.
Yeah, and let me interrupt. I didn't know that. See, that's really good to know that regionally you guys have these, area responsibilities, if you will.
As chair, I don't have that this year. I'm able to kind of keep an eye on everything, anything I want. But the other committee members have 5 or 6 committees. Either they're the primary rep for or the secondary rep. So 2 committee members at once, or focus specifically, say, on the SEC or the SWAC or the Sun Belt, as we see all 32 conferences. And then we come together. We actually have our final call. We've had 4 calls this year. Our final call is Sunday afternoon before we go to Indianapolis next week to really begin the selection process. So the conference monitoring program, whether it's, really diving deep into, some leagues that have 7, 8, maybe 9 teams that you got to talk about. We're looking at injuries. We're looking at the COVID pauses from before. We're looking at everything. So it's really hard for something to get past the committee. In fact, I would say it's near impossible.
Ever been any great knockdown dragouts in that room, especially as it gets close, with 2 people just screaming at each other because they disagree?
Well, this may disappoint some people, but no screaming, no yelling, no throwing anything.
Darn.
It's very collegial. It's very professional, but it can be very matter of fact as well. And there can be, especially when we get, into some of those seed line discussions, the differences between 1 and 2 seeds, or even that, the last 4 in, first 4 out. There are others that conversations, I should say, that, it may get a little contentious. There's some obvious disagreement on occasion that in my time, the chair has had to break a tie or 2, and we may have that again next weekend, but all very professional, all understanding. We got to get 68 teams together to play this mega event in a couple of weeks.
Mega event, which culminates in New Orleans. He's Tom Burnett. He's the commissioner of the Southland Conference, the outgoing commissioner, but we'll get to that later. We'll be back with him in just a minute. I'm Lee Feinswag at Sports 225.
Who says you need a vacation for a view like this? Or, I wish there was a place to get in shape. Try getting on the beaten path. Discover an ever-expanding network of trails and greenways. Some quintessential Southern beauty. Or romp through the woods in a magical land between the rivers. There's more to explore than you ever imagined. Beyond the swing sets. Breck, we are more than a playground.
Back with Tom Burnett, the Southland Conference Commissioner, who also is the NCAA Division I basketball committee chairman. We were talking about the process that they all go through to get to the field of 68, which still blows my mind that it's 68 instead of 64. But the fine line. But it must be dawn on everybody, or I don't know, that dawn not the right word, but weigh on everybody how significant this is to the sports world and how much money is at stake for all of the participants.
Yeah, that's a great point, Lee. And you just have to go back to last year, go back 2 years when we had to shut everything down. And, that was just part of everything else in our society shutting down. But last year, we had to find a way to have the tournament. And a lot of that was, let's be honest, it was the finances that come from the television agreement and that we all rely on, especially a league like mine, the Southland, that really has to have that financial boost each year. And to think that we would not have that for a second year in a row would have been devastating. I think more so than we'd like to believe. So having that tournament the way we played it in the controlled environment in Indianapolis was just the way we had to do it. And in the end, though, we got it done. The conferences were made whole through the television agreement. And here we are. And really a main focus now is to put the traditional tournament back on course at the 14 sites, starting in Dayton with the first 4, and then continuing on, like you say, to the Final 4 in New Orleans.
The selection process has a couple of things about it that always mystify me, and not the least of which is the geography. You're beholden to trying to keep teams within, I believe it's a 400-mile radius, maybe it's a 300, whenever possible, eliminate as many flights as you can. And so it's not really a true 1 through 64 seed. That's got to weigh heavily too in what you guys do.
Well, the seating order is true, the 1 through 68. But when it
Oh
comes
yeah,
to
68, not 64.
but on the bracketing, that's where you get into some of the other rules as it relates specifically to bracketing. And that's the last thing the committee will do on Sunday, beginning Sunday morning. We will again begin to bracket the tournament. The thing that we're not really so caught up in keeping people in their natural regions, but there is an effort made to keep people as close to home as they possibly can be. So you might have a team like, pick one, Florida, whose closest site may be Greenville, South Carolina, or pick another team out west and their closest one is Portland. You can do any example you want, but there's not a true kind of S-curve seating that we did have more of that in the Indy tournament last year because we were all in one spot. So that really didn't matter. There are other rules as it relates to when conference teams can play one another. In earlier rounds of the tournament, some can't play until a regional final. Some can't play until, maybe even the second round. They could play if they only played once during the regular season. So as conferences have expanded, some of the rules have had to change as well. But the geographic part of it is you will have an East Coast team going out to California to play, just like you'll have a Southern team maybe go up to Buffalo to play. And that just comes as you go through order. The next team up to put in the bracket has to go to its closest site if it's possible. And, believe it or not, Buffalo, New York might be closer than, say, going to San Antonio, Texas.
Buffalo's not close to anything, especially in the winter.
Buffalo's a fine town.
It is. And I've always enjoyed my time there, but I've also seen snow piled up 20 feet high, but that's another story for another day. In the case of your particular conference this year, the Southland, what are your thoughts about that going in? Because in the rule is true, right? You can't be since you don't get a vote per se in the committee, but the Southland person would leave when it's being discussed.
Correct. Any discussion about my teams, or let's say Greg Byrne from Alabama is the SEC rep. So his role is a little bit different. As a conference commissioner, I can't be in any discussion involving any of my teams. The reality is that's probably going to be one team, and that's our tournament winner and where they go. But someone like Greg, or who's going to have a team likely in the heart of all the discussions, he will have to leave the room. So committee members cannot be part of the discussion. They are able to answer factual questions, kind of yes or no questions. If we ask the questions, was this player out, or was this coach out because of COVID, whatever the case may be, but very matter of fact, cannot get into any of the discussions as it relates to selection or seating.
Let's finish with this on this segment because you brought it up. COVID, still has wreaked havoc with some of the scheduling. Some of the players have missed. Coaches haven't been there. To what degree does that factor in with the committee as far as looking at results and with seating?
Well, as you know, there's still some games being remade or made up here at the end. And, some of these conferences are playing 3 games in this final week just to kind of squeeze them all in. And, that's tough. And that competitively, I'm sure that has an issue, especially if you're on the road, maybe 3 times in this final week. But, we're really treating the COVID issues much like we would injuries. And the committee is very aware. We have a spreadsheet program that really goes through every team, who was out. An example, Johnny Davis at Wisconsin, who's a fantastic player, was out for a game they lost against Providence early on in the season. So that's been an example of, you got to take into account that Wisconsin was out there without their top player at the time. And there's going to be COVID examples. There's going to be injury examples. There's going to be coaches who are out. We have a coach currently suspended here down the stretch in the Big Ten, and that comes into play as well. However, all that being said, the committee is still looking at the results, who you played, where you played them, and what was the result. And did you win or did you lose? And ultimately, that's what the committee has to fall back on, fully understanding that this team may have been shorthanded either from a coaching perspective or a team perspective.
This is so much fun. I'm enjoying this so much, and your answers are gold. But we're going to take a break. When we come back, I'm going to ask you about your favorite topic, conference realignment. He's Tom Burnett. I'm Lee Feinswag. It's Sports 225.
Who says you need a vacation for a view like this? Or, I wish there was a place to get in shape. Try getting on the beaten path. Discover an ever-expanding network of trails and greenways. Some quintessential Southern beauty. Or romp through the woods in a magical land between the rivers. There's more to explore than you ever imagined. Beyond the swing sets. Breck, we are more than a playground.
Back on Sports 225, hanging out with Tom Burnett, the outgoing Southland Conference commissioner, who also is the chair of the NCAA Division I basketball committee. But, and I'm saving the good stuff for the end about him leaving his job, but he's leaving behind a conference that is also affected greatly by all of the movement. Southland Conference teams have come and go a lot lately. Specifically in the SEC, that we're waiting whenever it's going to happen that Oklahoma and Texas are coming here. And there's more things afoot, I have no doubt.
Well, I would agree with you there. There is more coming, and no one can see quite the end of this. But you've touched on, when do Texas and Oklahoma do this? That triggers what the Big 12 does next, and so on and so forth. But actually, before Texas and OU occurred, that news broke. It was really the Southland, and only the Southland, about a year ago, where we had some teams decide to leave. And you never want to see anyone leave, but certainly conference membership is somewhat voluntary, despite a few financial penalties perhaps. But institutions are free to make decisions that they think they're in their best interest. We may not like them as their current home, and where they've been very successful, honestly, for a very long time, for them to leave. But that means
you have to be tactful, but I don't. I think some of the schools that left the Southland, like for the whack, are out of their wacky minds. But that's another story.
Well, I'll leave that one alone for now. But again, we've seen it before, where schools have left other leagues or affiliations to come join us. I saw it when I worked at the Sun Belt in New Orleans for all those years. So that's just simply going to happen. And again, I don't see the end of the road yet with that. I think, folks are going to continue to try to position themselves the best they can. What I would say to that is, we're really trying as hard as we can to remain regional, to remain close to one another, which we think is advantageous competitively, academically, as well as kids can get back to campus and go back to class. It's great for their families who can travel and see them on the road. So we've been somewhat criticized in the past as being a bus league, but I think for us, being a bus league is a real positive, and we're trying to hang on to that. And we're just simply not going to fly across time zones to play softball or volleyball or other sports when it's not necessary to do so.
No, I appreciate that. On a different note, or I guess a semi-related note, the NCAA is in flux as well. And, you're always hearing about, all right, well, the group of five, as they like to call themselves. They're not the Power Five anymore, Tom. They're the group of five. And others, maybe positioning themselves to form a new organization or change it football related. What do you see in that regard?
I don't know that I see necessarily a full breakaway. I think even if let's say a group of schools were to break away, there's still going to be an NCAA type organization. You've got to bring all those folks together. You've got to have oversight. You've got to have championship operation. There's got to be some type of compliance oversight. So there's going to be a national organization. And at times we tend to demonize our association, but ultimately, and you've heard this before, that association is really all of us, the collective membership, and the things we want to have in place. And I would say that's not just the Southland Conference speaking, that's the Big 12 talking, that's the SEC. They want a national association and guidelines for all of us to follow. So, but all that said, we've agreed to adjust the constitution of the association. There's now a transformational committee in place that's going to really, get into the weeds a bit on bylaw changes and things like that. So I think it's going to be different in the future, but I think there's always going to be an oversight group, and where all of us fit in that group remains to be seen.
At the volleyball NCAA championships in December, I got to see Mark Emmert, who I've known, of course, since he was at LSU, and we got to talk to him mostly about volleyball related stuff. But I even had a chance to visit with him a little bit. I said, "What's wrong with you? You got another contract." I said, "Why do you want this job?" Of course,
what was his answer? I'm curious.
Just yucking it up a little bit, and of course he gets paid an awful lot of money that's generationally changing. So, I could see it. Plus, he probably has a pretty fun gig, except for the tough choices he's got to make at times. So, yeah, well, let's leave it at that. When we get back, a few more questions for Tom Burnett as we go into the last segment of Sports 225.
Who says you need a vacation for a view like this? Or, I wish there was a place to get in shape. Try getting on the beaten path. Discover an ever-expanding network of trails and greenways. Some quintessential Southern beauty. Or romp through the woods in a magical land between the rivers. There's more to explore than you ever imagined. Beyond the swing sets. Breck, we are more than a playground.
Coming down the home stretch of another Sports 225, go to sports225.com to see when we're on Your View, which is what you're probably watching it on. And this week, I've committed finally updating our YouTube stuff, and this will be one of the shows I'll get up there. Tom Burnett is with me. He's the Southland Conference Commissioner, who's also the chair of the NCAA Division I Basketball Committee. But that tournament marks the end of your reign, so to speak.
Well, you're right. I will made a decision to transition away from my role as commissioner, and just through some consultations with our presidential board of directors, and really got to thinking about the future of the conference. I've had the great pleasure to do this for 19 years. Hard to believe it's been that long, and I think we really moved the needle on what this conference has been able to accomplish during that time. But you start to think about the future of the league and the future, personally. I've got a daughter graduating college this spring. So some things are coming together from a personal perspective that my committee term ends here with the basketball committee. So there was always some thought that this might be the time for me. And when I think about this league in 5 to 10 years, it was really hard to picture myself being a part of the administration of this conference going forward. Last summer, we hired a fantastic deputy commissioner, Chris Grant, who joined us from the Pac-12 conference, and he's going to take over right after Final Four, and he'll do just a terrific job. And it's just a bundle of energy and great thought, creative thinking, and I really think is going to help lead this conference into the future.
I know you're going to stay on as a consultant and be part of it for a while, but where do you see yourself transitioning to? You impress me as being too young and have too much to offer college athletics to retire.
Well, I don't know about too young. I am 57, Lee. So that is, unless you have a secret on how to retire at 57, I'll, and outside of winning the Powerball, perhaps. But no, there's something else for me. And I had always envisioned this, that, maybe there's another chapter or two left. There's some gas in the tank, certainly. And I'm excited. I love what I do. It's been a real pleasure for a long time. So there's something else out there for me, and I look forward to that. And if I can help the Southland Conference and our larger enterprise in this interim period, I'm more than happy to do that as well.
I see you becoming an athletic director of a school that has all the sports for the right reasons. He's Tom Burnett. We've known each other a long time. I have really appreciated this visit. Have a wonderful month. I hope the selection process goes great and nobody complains about the seating and who's left out, and that you have a great time in New Orleans to cap it off at the Final Four.
Lee, thanks to you and all our great friends in Baton Rouge. It's been a pleasure to be with you.
All right. Thank you for watching Sports 225.
At carnival time by Baton Rouge Bay, that's the site of my story. At Spanish Town Mardi Gras.